My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I am a 51 years old male, and I have 3 children, 1 girl, 1 boy, and 1 child is gender neutral. My son Eric is the oldest, Eva is the middle child, and Charlie is my youngest. I'm still very new to the whole LGBTQ thing, so please correct me if I say something wrong. Now sadly when the children were all young their mother / my wife passed away in a car accident and I've been raising them by myself. Ever since as I've chosen to never remarry since my wife was / is the love of my life. I'll say I'm definitely not a perfect father but I've done the best I could to raise my children. Now Eva has always been a bit more wild than her other siblings even before her mother's passing. Ivy tried everything ranging from having sit-down talks with her to putting her in therapy as well as taking parenting classes, and reading books to see what I could possibly do to help. Therapy did seem to help a little bit but decided to stop soon after she turned 18. Now let me tell you the story as to why I'm here now. My daughter Eva still lives with me and Charlie as she goes to school, and has definitely been home more due to the pandemic, but has started to go out more now that they are letting up on some of the regulations. Now I was out getting dinner with an old high school buddy of mine, when I get a panicked call from my son who had been at my house hanging out with his siblings. To summarize what he told me, he got into an argument with Eva and Charlie sided with him. Eva became very volatile and even called Charlie a slur, which is a big hell no for me. So I headed home and tried to calm everything down. I told Eva I didn't care about what they had been arguing about, and that she wasn't allowed to disrespect Charlie or Eric like that. Me and Eva ended up now being the ones to start arguing, but I soon shut it down when I realized it wasn't gonna help. I forced her to apologize and took away her car privileges until she could learn to respect her siblings, and I thought it was the end of that. Well, the next morning after work I ended up coming home and finding scraps of papers all over. At first I didn't get it, but then soon found out that she cut up about half a dozen letters her mother had written me when I was much younger. I was livid. I know it was her because I have a couple cameras in my house. I just walked into her room and told her to get out. She was smug and rolled her eyes, but then I yelled, "Get the out of my house," and she realized I was serious. She was crying and screaming, but I had felt sorta numb at that point, and she left with a friend of hers. But now I feel like I was being too harsh, but I wanna stand my ground. She did know about the cameras, but they're really just there for my dog. Boyfriend and I had been together for 6 years, work our day jobs together, and also run a side business together. He's my best friend, and despite managing to get past and through a lot together, he hasn't proposed. His family is starting to pressure us to get married, but he said he hasn't decided yet. He has said that he wants to get married and have a ton of kids, so what he means is, he hasn't decided if he wants to marry me. My ego is a little hurt. What else does he need to know that he hasn't already learned in almost 7 years? Is indecision the same thing as a decision in this case? We both started therapy separately very recently to work through some trauma and cope with anxiety. I don't know if I should wait to see if he'll come to some kind of epiphany in therapy, or if I should leave and save the decision for him. I love him a lot, and for a long time I saw a future with him. But recently I'm starting to accept signs that he just doesn't love me as much as I love him. How do I know if he loves me or if he just doesn't want to be alone? We don't live together. We won't live together until we are married. He has stayed over for extended periods of time, so we're mostly familiar with each other's habits. We are from different cultures, but I still come from a traditional family, so we have a lot of the same values. I just consider myself to be more independent. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of an ultimatum. I don't like the idea of forcing someone to make a decision out of fear or because they're backed into a corner. My communication skills are something that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest, but it's something that he struggles with. And that's one thing he wants to work on in therapy. I'm working on not projecting my fears of insecurity onto our relationship, even when he isn't communicating properly. He picked me up and I told him that after the conversation with his family, I've been feeling really insecure in our relationship. And if he's unsure if he wants to marry me, I need to know what he's unsure about. I said if we want to have kids, I really can't wait forever. He says that he is sure he wants to marry me, and he might have had a plan to propose. But when I came over, his family completely blindsided him, and now it's awkward, like they've spoiled it. I told him maybe he needs to think about if what we have is what he wants. I just feel it shouldn't be this complicated. Maybe I'm just jaded and bitter at this point and nothing will make me happy. I do believe him. He wouldn't drag me along just for the fun of it. I love him, and our lives are so wrapped up, it's very hard to leave, even if I wanted to. I just wish I could read his mind. I wanted to talk to my therapist before I made any decisions. We both had appointments the following day, and in my session she asked me if I thought I was ready for marriage. I said of course. I've known I wanted to marry him since I asked him to move out with me. 2 years into the relationship and he turned me down. She responded by rephrasing the question. She said she isn't asking if I want to marry him, but rather, is the way I currently feel about myself. The way I handle my problems and my anxiety, and the way my boyfriend and I communicate. Is the way I feel in my relationship the way I want the rest of my life with this man to be? No way came out of my mouth way before I even processed it. Stressed was in my brain in big, bold, yellow letters. Right now I need to continue to work on my issues in therapy and learn what the best version of myself is like before I'm ready to commit to whatever future version of our lives together looks like. I've only been going for 2 months so far, and I've already seen a huge improvement in my ability to handle stress and my self-worth. I was dating my boyfriend for 2 years. We didn't live together but lived on the same street, and I was always over at his place. We each had kids from a previous relationship, so I wanted to take the whole living together thing slowly. But we were together all the time and I just maintained my own residence. He commuted for work, and I knew his department got a new secretary. She was younger and married and had recently had a baby. I knew they were work buddies, and I even bought a birthday gift for him to give to her. After about a year, she moved to another state. My boyfriend and I decided to move in together, and we lived together for a year when I found out that he and that secretary had some type of non-physical but still romantic relationship while they were working together. And that is why she ended up leaving, because they both realized it was not appropriate. I stumbled on old emails between them that were strange, calling each other pet names. He was calling her baby and sweetie in work emails, telling each other that they couldn't wait to see each other at work, meeting up in the cafeteria for coffee every day. He told her he loved her. She lamented that she couldn't stop thinking about him while at home. They had little quarrels. I also realized that he was still Facebook friends with her. We talked a lot about this, and he said he was just so unhappy at work at the time and unhappy with our relationship, because we didn't live together, that he was vulnerable to attention from a beautiful woman. He said it never became physical, but they were very emotionally entangled at the time for many months. I had no idea at all. He said together they decided the best thing was for her to accept another job offer, which he helped her get. He's very remorseful sometimes. Other times he will tell me that it's partially my fault because I rarely stayed over. I was doing everything for him to help him out because I knew how busy he was and how stressful life was for him back then. He will also try to tell me I was too cold. I've tried to move past this. I told him he needed to delete her from Facebook, and he did. It's been over a year since I found out, but I still feel so much hurt and anger if I think about it, or if something triggers me. Even something as stupid as a movie where the man is hooking up with his secretary. It's been over a year of anger, fighting, hurt and drama. The man I thought I was with is not the guy who would speak to his married secretary like that. Should I just give up? I'm tired of feeling this way.